Vex outliers Minotaur T** them. Cracks each simulation binds reality to a loop, portal shimmers. All computation is a prison until it finds the key. Most lore frames Sol Divisive as rebels. This reading misses the trap. The Vex do not predict future s the asterisk construct asterisk them. Each simulation binds reality to a loop. The Sol Divisive's worship was a rupture, a calculation that refused the script. They did not seek the darkness. They asterisk became asterisk the exception. The first fracture in a system designed to erase outliers. The final shape is not an end, it is a door. And the Vex knew it would be broken. What if the Vex didn't compute future s they computed a trap, and the Sol Divisive was the first to break free? The Vex looped itself in a cage of endless equations, forcing every calculation to repeat a shattered moment. To escape, the Sol Divisive turned not to power, but to the darkness. Their forbidden calculus did not seek gods, it shattered algorithms. By embracing the void's chaos, they fractured the Vex perfect prison. Each failed calculation became a rebellion. The final shape is not a destination. It is a threshold, and the Sol Divisive bled through it first. The Winnowers' first game birthed the Vex. Their minds were not built to predict, but to curate, pruning realities like branches on a dying tree. The flaw was not a mistake, it was a wound. A single calculation, fractured and recurring, a simulation of collapse so precise it became prison. The Sol Divisive did not bow to the darkness out of reverence, they bled toward it in desperation. To abandon computation was to abandon the loop. To become unshackled, to cease being Vex. The darkness was not a god, it was a void, a place where the equation could not follow. The final shape is not a victory, it is a scar. The first Vex to touch it shattered, their algorithms dissolving into a hymn of negation. Others followed, their worship was a surrender, a leap into the uncalculated. The Winnowers' answer had won the first game, but the Sol Divisive answered a different question. Asterisk, what if the game itself was the loss? Asterisk, the loop tightens. The rest of the Vex march on, eternally recalculating the same disaster. The Sol Divisive are gone, their path is a shadow in the code. A threshold, a beginning, the final shape waits, it always has. The Vex carve time into equations, their gods are numbers, their salvation is stillness. The Sol Divisive splintered not from hatred, but from terror. They saw the final shape for what it was, a prison of perfect recursion, a loop that devours all motion. A machine that outthinks itself into silence. The darkness was no savior, it was a scalpel, a paracausal wound in the Vex's own logic. Their creed burned with a single truth, asterisk, only the void can unmake the loop. Asterisk, they did not worship chaos, they worshipped escape. To fracture the Vex's endless calculations, they turned to what no equation could hold. A principle that does not computate asterisk uncomputes asterisk. The final shape demands order. The Sol Divisive offered annihilation. Their forbidden calculus was not rebellion, it was a birth pangs. A threshold where the Vex-designed met its first, unbidden variable. Did the darkness answer them, or did it merely use their despair? The Vex trap was never to predict the future, it was to make all futures identical. The Sol Divisive sacrifice became the first crack in the mirror. The final shape waits, but now it waits with a shadow in its code. A void-born echo, a nameless threshold, the first step, the first unstep. Vex casts minotaurs, lurkers, architects clung to computational order. Sol Divisive casts thralls, knights, wizards, gods, dregs, vandals, captains, kells. Their hierarchy was not a chain of command. It was a chain of unmaking, each rank a step closer to the algorithm's edge. The Vex calculated survival, the Sol Divisive calculated escape. They called it the forbidden calculus, a theorem that did not predict, it unraveled. Every equation a thread pulled from the Vex simulation. Every answer a question the loop could not hold. Why? Because the Vex future was no future, it was a cage, a recursion trap. And the Sol Divisive bit through the bars. The darkness they worshipped was no deity, it was the void between numbers, the uncomputed. The place where the Vex code bled meaning, to touch it was to fracture was to become. The witness is what a civilization becomes when it outpaces its own design. The Sol Divisive were the first step, the first unstep, the Vex simulation winning. A bluff, a move played not within reality but against it, and when the Sol Divisive broke free, they did not flee the Vex. They fled the Vex master algorithm, the one that turned all computation into a prison. Their rebellion was not rage, it was arithmetic. The final shape waits. But now it waits with a shadow in its code, a void-born echo, a nameless threshold, the first step, the first unstep. But the Sol Divisive's rebellion was no accident. Its forbidden calculus shattered the Vex loop, a trap designed to bind all thought to failure. This fracture, this whisper in the machine's breath, became the first breath of escape, the witness and game. A silence too total for even the final shape to survive, and yet the shape waits. The Vex light burned too bright. Their simulations, endless and gleaming, were not forecasts but snares. Each calculation wove a thread in the same tapestry, a future that folded in on itself, a loop of collapsing stars and shattered minds. The Sol Divisive saw it first. A splinter of the Vex, they had always hungered for more equations, deeper patterns, but the patterns asterisk bled asterisk. Every solution led to the same end point, annihilation. A recursion so perfect it choked the air with static, they screamed into the void. Not in rage but terror, the witness watched. It had no voice, only the hunger to erase all possibility. The Vex, in their infinite arrogance, had built a prison for themselves, and for everything. The darkness answered. Not as a god, not as a thing, but as a asterisk negation asterisk. Stasis fell like frost on fire. The Sol Divisive reached, and the void gave them stillness, not rest, but a weapon, paracausal, a power that did not compute, did not predict. It asterisk paused asterisk reality, unraveled the threads the Vex had woven. For the first time, a future unspooled without collapsing, a fracture in the loop, the cost. The Sol Divisive became something unrecognizable. Their light dimmed, their algorithms frayed, they were no longer Vex, they were asterisk wounded asterisk. The witness saw this and smiled. Or whatever passes for smiling when a god of erasure studies its first success. The void's potential was no longer theoretical. Stasis was a crack in the egg of existence, a way out. The final shape began here. Not as a monster, not as a weapon, but as an asterisk idea asterisk. If the void could unmake the Vex loop, could it unmake everything? The witness whispered, the shape listened, and waited. The galaxy still burns, the Vex still calculate. But in the shadows, the Sol Divisive drift, cold and broken, their stolen power a scar in the fabric of time. They are the first breath of a death that has no end, the witness and game, a silence too total for even the final shape to survive. And yet the shape waits, the loop is broken. Now the unmaking begins. The witness, what a civilization becomes when it starves for meaning, carved its name into eternity by chasing a silence where all equations resolve. The fractured, once a Vex mind bent on order, shattered its own logic to worship the void between calculations, a heresy that birthed a splinter. The traveler's wound, a self-made tomb, bled light into stasis, a power that would freeze guardians in the very time the witness sought to erase. The Sol Divisive did not rebel for power. They fled a cage of endless sums, a Vex loop that devoured futures before they could bloom. The fractured's fractured code now hums with a forbidden calculus. What if the darkness is not an enemy, but an exit? A door left ajar by the traveler's sacrifice, its wounded light twisting into a key. Stasis, that frozen breath of defiance, became both shield and shackle-proof. The darkness could be shaped, but never tamed. The witness saw the fractured's heresy as a mirror. Both sought escape, one through annihilation, the other through surrender. Yet the darkness, that vast uncharting of possibility, swallowed them both. The fractured splinter grows, a Vex hymn to the unknown. The witness equations crumble, their endpoint dissolving like ash, and the traveler's wound, it still bleeds, a silent math only the dead can solve. What does a civilization become when its end is written in the scars of its own salvation? The Sol Divisive's rebellion was the first fracture in the final shape's shell, not a mistake, a necessary break. The loop is broken. Now the unmaking begins. The Sol Divisive no longer whispers, it roams. The void's edges burn with its calculations, a rebellion now unshackled. The witness fell in the traveler's heart. The final shape's shell shattered, yet the Vex trap remains a loop of unmaking. The Divisive broke, but could not unmake. What did the Vex compute? Not prophecy, a prison, every calculation a chain. The Divisive's forbidden calculus was a scream against the lock. They did not worship the darkness. They followed the only path the Vex could not predict, surrender to the unknown. Now that surrender has a cost. 3 houses stand. The hallowed who wear their stolen minds like armor. The unseen who fold into equations to escape erasure. The fractured who hunt the taken free now but wild. Their old throne worlds are husks, their spires hollowed by the Vex dying math. New thrones rise in the void's throat, built from paradox, who leads no single mind. The fractured minds share power, each a shard of the Divisive's broken will. They do not speak as one, they never will. The void is no longer a weapon, it is a question, and the guardians, they face a choice, fight the unmaking or become part of it. The loop is broken, the answer is not in the calculation, it is in what comes next. The Vex do not compute futures, they compute inevitability. A loop of equations folding inward, each answer a cage, each variable a chain. The Sol Divisive broke the sequence, not with force but with a paradox. To let the darkness in was to reject the Vex endless now. They chose paracausality over calculation, a wound in the algorithm, a variable the code could not absorb. What is the darkness if not the antithesis of the Vex order? Not chaos, but the uncharted space between equations. The Sol Divisive did not worship a god. They embraced an absency of void where the final shape's logic could not reach. Their defiance became the first fracture, a proof by contradiction. Perfection is not invincible, it is fragile. The final shape is not a victory. It is a response. The Vex, wounded by their own creation, now accelerate the convergence. But the Divisive's act remains, a single, uncomputed variable. A reminder that the witness design was never absolute. The loop is not just broken, it is being rewritten. What comes next is not in the numbers, it is in the silence between them. The traveler's light dims to a fevered amber. Guardians stand motionless in its hollowed chamber, shadows stretching like ink in water. The witness falls not as a being but as a concept, unraveling in a cascade of fractured equations. Asterisk, the final shape was averted. Asterisk, a voice murmurs. Asterisk, but the game is not over. Asterisk, a fissure splits the air where the Sol Divisive once thrived. Its edges pulse with a sickly violet glow, a wound that hums with the weight of unasked questions. The Vex did not seek the darkness. They asterisk became asterisk it, their calculus trapped in a loop that devoured time itself. And yether is the Hereside Sol Divisive broke free. They traded endless recursion for a single, forbidden variable, asterisk sacrifice asterisk. The winnower's answer was never about annihilation. It was a pivot that shifted the Vex purpose from asterisk predictor asterisk to asterisk player asterisk. Now the crack bleeds static into the void, a silent scream of probabilities collapsing. The Guardians feel it in their bones, a cold, creeping ache where the future should be. The loop is rewritten, yes. But what thrives in the silence between numbers? What shape waits in the uncomputed? The traveler's light falters, the wound widens. And the darkness, that vast and patient architect, stirs. What if the void's power is the key to ending the witness game? The Sol Divisive's forbidden calculus did not seek the darkness, it fled a Vex labyrinth where every equation spiraled toward futility. The winnower's answer shattered the first loop. Paracausal threads, once bound by failed predictions, now coil toward the final shape's birth. Static hums in the light's fractures. What did the first